The movie begins in the Yukon Territory's gold rush near the end of the 19th century. An aged man leads a wolfdog into a dog-fighting arena where hundreds of patrons await the main event. It was Beauty Smith, whose head slants down to the neck, with a remarkably wide forehead, and with large muddy eyes. The main event is a 2 versus 1. 2 champion dogs, Jocko and Scratch, against the protagonist, Whitefang, the legend of the Klondike and terror of Fort Yukon. Whitefang gazes at the bright full moon lighting up the arena through its broken roof. He closes his eyes as his opponents charge at him. The young Whitefang, sleeping in his mother's arms, opens his eyes and sees the morning sun. He carefully walks toward the entrance of the den, anticipating what awaits like it's his first time to be outside. Along with the joy of learning how to play, he immediately gets familiarized with the dangers that lay ahead for a young wolfdog like him. An eagle might dive and snatch him, or he may drown on the river, but thankfully, his mother was there to guide and protect him from potential harm. As it begins to snow, they run back to the den to seek shelter when a wildcat confronts them. His mother faces the wildcat and defeats it, but sustains an injury on her hind leg. They enter the den where his mother lies to regain strength. While his mother cannot hunt, he learns to scavenge food for his mother, wild berries. When the snowstorm ceases, they go out in search of food. On their way, they see a pack of wolves chasing a sled. Aboard the sled are Whedon Scott, Marshall Todd, and the prisoner Jim Hall. The wolves are getting closer as Whedon loads his gun to fend them off. Whedon aims but fires in a nearby tree instead of the wolves to halt them. The crew successfully evades the wolves and then set up a camp for the night. Whitefang and his mother approach the crew as they are having dinner. When Marshall Todd checks on their sled dogs to feed them, he notices that the dogs have magically increased in number. Whedon hurries to see, and there is indeed one who does not belong to the pack, Whitefang's mother. Whedon suggests keeping her as part of the team, but Todd disagrees due to her hind leg's injury. Todd aims his gun at Whitefang's mother. Whitefang suddenly appears to protect his mother and barks at them. Whedon asks for some salmon and offers it to Whitefang, which he happily accepts. Whitefang and his mother ran off with their food. On their way back to the den, they notice that a pack of wolves is hunting them down. When they stop at a corner, the wolves have already taken their position and circle around them. Whitefang's mother throws the fish and uses it as a distraction to get away. The two find a tree to rest for the night. The next day, they bump into a village standing near a river and make their way to it. When one of the villagers, Vichai, notices their presence and shouts, Grey Beaver, the tribal leader of the village, hurries in to check. He recognizes the female wolfdog, Whitefang's mother, and calls her Kitch, his fastest sled dog back then. Whitefang appears and growls at Grey Beaver. He lifts Whitefang and names him, thus now known as Whitefang. In the village, Whitefang learns everything he needs to by watching his mother and the villagers, from pulling a sled filled with woods to picking up wild berries. Not long after, Whitefang grows up as a fine wolfdog who's now able to pull a sled he cannot do so before. Meanwhile, after a trip, Grey Beaver gets informed by his granddaughter, Vichai, of a man waiting for his arrival to talk about some important matters. It was Marshall Todd who informs Grey Beaver that due to the recent gold strike, the territory plans to sell the land where the village currently stands. As they cannot leave the land which has been theirs since their ancestors, Grey Beaver offers to buy the land for a higher price. Marshall Todd agrees and leaves to inform the territory of the deal. To gather the funds to buy the land, Grey Beaver instructs the villagers to make more mittens for them to sell. He then went on to the north across the river to lay out the traps. Whitefang follows and cannot keep up with them at first, but finds a shortcut to reach the front of the team faster. Grey Beaver's face lights up as he sees Whitefang in front and tells him he is ready to be part of the sled dogs. In the north, Grey Beaver meets William, the one who hunts in that territory. Grey Beaver asks William to sit down with him around the campfire and talk. The next morning, Whitefang wakes up and sees that Kitch is being handed over to William. Whitefang tries to follow Kitch, but she growls at him as if telling her to stay with Grey Beaver. Whitefang understands and watches as his mother disappears into the forest. Grey Beaver consoles Whitefang and tells him he now becomes the leader of the team. However, the rest of the dogs must recognize him as their leader first. Grey Beaver ties Whitefang into a wood pole and leads him to a clearing where he left Whitefang to face the rest of the dogs. It is a vital part for the dogs to recognize Whitefang's authority. After a while, the dogs come running to Grey Beaver, whining and taking cover behind him. Whitefang succeeds. When enough mittens have been made, Grey Beaver boards a boat going to Fort Yukon to sell them. He is accompanied by Whitefang. When they arrive at the port, a man with a dog confronts them. Grey Beaver was about to leave, but the man releases his dog to attack. Whitefang charges and brings down the dog with ease. Beauty Smith has witnessed this and gets immediately fascinated with Whitefang. He tells Grey Beaver that people on the fort won't bother to buy the mittens, so he offers to buy Whitefang the same price needed for the village. Beauty Smith wants to train Whitefang and make him fight in the dog-fighting arena, but Grey Beaver disagrees and leaves. Later that night, Grey Beaver sets up his mittens and sells them at the fort. Not only do the mittens made of good quality, but he also sells them at a lower price, and so the crowds gather to buy. Beauty Smith watches from a distance while plotting his evil plan to get Whitefang, no matter what. He buys a pair of mittens as part of his plan to know where Grey Beaver keeps his money. He then orders one of his men to steal the money. Back at the hotel room, Grey Beaver finds out that the money was nowhere, and so he searches inside the room and outside the port. He anxiously looks for it while thinking of the welfare of the whole village. In the morning, Beauty Smith appears and offers to buy Whitefang again. Grey Beaver does not agree at first, but since he now has no mittens and their village needs the money, he eventually agrees. He leaves as Whitefang whines, calling for him. Near the enclosure, Beauty Smith worries that Whitefang will not recognize him as the master, and so his assistant asks for his cane and goes into the enclosure. Outside, the sound of slamming canes and whines can be heard. Whitefang enters the arena on a leash following Beauty Smith's command. The bettors start to place their bets for that night's special event, Whitefang's first ever fight. He is up against Laddie, a brown wolf dog. Not even a minute into the fight, Whitefang manages to knock out Laddie, and the crowd cheers as a new champion has been crowned. Every night, the name of his opponent gets crossed out of the board. Every night, Whitefang always emerges victorious, filling the bags of his master, Beauty Smith. Whitefang opens his eyes and the scene is back to the beginning of the movie, before getting attacked by his two opponents. He then opens his eyes again and gets woken up by a gunshot. He is now in a new cage with bandages around his body. Whitefang starts to sniff the surroundings as he makes his way outside the cage. A woman startles him and he runs back to his cage. The woman follows to give him food before she hurries back to the house. Inside, Whedon has yet to recover from the incident at the arena. The woman, who turns out to be Whedon's wife, Maggie, tends to him and mentions Whitefang, who was brought along with him by Marshall Todd. Whedon warns her about Whitefang, but she did not listen. One day, when she was out preparing the soil for gardening, a large trunk is in the way. Whitefang helps her remove it when he sees her struggling. Whedon then appears with a cane he's using for supporting him to walk. Whitefang seems to be afraid of the cane, so he drops it and kneels beside his wife. He extends his hand and Whitefang recognizes him and his belt from when he gave a piece of salmon to the young Whitefang and his mother. Whitefang then warms up to him and gives him snuggles. From then on, Whitefang becomes Whedon and his wife's companion. They even train him not to eat chickens to be a good boy for their upcoming child. However, the Scotts have no idea that someone has been spying on them from the woods. Beauty Smith receives the news that he is alive and being taken care of by Whedon and his wife. He angrily swears to have the marshals pay for what they did at the arena. He then employs the help of Jim Hall, a prisoner who escaped the San Quentin prison where 3 guards are eliminated during the escape. Meanwhile, at Scott's residence, Whedon had just arrived from the city for the telegram from his brother in California, the place where they plan to move out. Scott looks for Whitefang and finds him sitting on the edge of the cliff watching the forest below them. When Whedon is about to head back home, Jim Hall appears behind him with a huge wooden bat. Hall grabs him by the neck and pins him to a tree. Hall gets surprised and stumbles on the ground when Whitefang appears and jumps right onto him. Whitefang bites his hand as he pleads to spare his life. This gives Whedon the chance to give him a knockout blow. Whedon ties Hall to restrain him, then instructs Whitefang to immediately run back to the house. When the two arrive, they see Beauty Smith sitting on the front porch of their house waiting for them. Beauty Smith greets them and says that Hall must have missed the chance to finish Whedon. Whitefang recognizes him and growls, seeing his previous master. Beauty Smith wants Whitefang for himself, so he resorts to using Whedon's wife as a hostage. When Whitefang sees Beauty Smith's cane, he lets out a soft, scared whine. Seeing this makes Smith think he has complete control over Whitefang, whom he tortures using his cane. Whedon stumbles to the ground as Beauty Smith hits him with the cane on the leg. Smith raises the cane over Whedon's head and prepares to deal another blow when Whitefang jumps and snatches the cane. Smith's eyes widen in disbelief and stammers as he tries to process what he just saw. Whitefang bites into the cane. Maggie stomps over the feet of Smith's right-hand man and breaks free. Whedon sees this opportunity to charge and pin the man on the ground. He then instructs Maggie to go after Smith, who is now being chased by Whitefang into the cage. Smith stumbles backward as Whitefang approaches him. Beauty Smith pleads as Whitefang inches closer to him. Maggie arrives and stops Whitefang, which he immediately obeys. The other marshals then arrive to take custody of the criminals as Whedon and his wife prepare the carriage to leave. They bid goodbye to Marshal Todd and give him thanks. On their way, Maggie notices how Whitefang stares at the forest and realizes that Whitefang belongs to his home. Whedon halts the carriage and gets off. They tell Whitefang to go back to his home and sets him free. Whitefang runs to the forest and stops to get a final glance at Whedon and Maggie, who wave their hand as a farewell to their beloved companion. Whitefang makes his way to the forest, pacing through the trees, and arrives at a rock overlooking the entire Yukon territory. With all his might, he lets out a howl that can be heard up to the village of his first master, Grey Beaver. His mother, Kitch, who is now William's companion, also heard his son, and she looks at the horizon as if feeling at ease to know her son is safe. The movie ends with Whitefang finally reaching the place he belongs and is meant to be.